Hello everyone, good morning. It's been a while since I last made a tutorial about JASP. So I'm making one today specifically. Today we're going to discuss how to run basic moderation in JASP. I've been a long time user of JASP as an instructor. I use JASP in teaching statistics to my undergraduate students. But one of my problems with JASP is that every time I get to the part wherein I need to teach mediation or moderation, I always have to switch software. I always have to use Jamovi because for the longest time, JASP did not offer a comprehensive module that can run moderation and mediation analysis. But that changes because as of early this year, JASP released a new version, this time including the process macro module. So this one, for those of you who's familiar with process, you know that this is an add-in in SPSS, and this allowed us to run moderation, mediation, and other relatively complex modeling. If you're a user of JASP, you probably will not see this yet, no, but if you click on the plus button over to the right side and go to the library of modules, if you select process, then you would have this particular option, and this will allow you to run mediation, moderation models, even serial mediation and moderated mediation. So a lot of models can be tested using this. Do note, however, that this is still in a beta version, but hopefully in the future we will have a cleaner version of this particular module. Okay, so let's get on with it. So we'll try running moderation in a situation wherein the moderator is dichotomous for this particular tutorial. For those of you who are not familiar with moderation, basically it's a kind of modeling which tests whether the relationship between two variables, in this case, for example, reviewing for an exam, and the level of anxiety one experiences, let's call it as test anxiety, if the relationship between these two is different between groups or different at one point in time or another point in time. So meaning to say that the relationship between these two is not consistent, and it's dependent or contingent on some other variable, a third variable. And that variable is what we call as a moderator. In this case, let's say, for example, that a theoretical argument can be made that while reviewing lessens anxiety, the impact of reviewing, of preparation towards anxiety, might not be the same across gender. So let's say, for example, that there's a theory suggesting that the relationship between reviewing and anxiety is stronger among, let's say, for example, females versus males. Then that means to say that biological sex serves as a moderator, because the relationship between these two, between IV and DV, is different for males and is different for females. Okay, so that's our first example. So first we will examine the relationship between reviewing and anxiety. In the analysis, they will also look into the relationship between biological sex and anxiety. And to test the moderator or the moderation, we have to create a dummy variable by multiplying values of reviewing and values of sex, creating another variable which we refer to as our product term or our interaction. And when this predicts anxiety, then that is indicative of moderation. And if there is moderation, we'd have to see in the simple slopes what kind of moderation is happening. What's the difference in the relationship between reviewing and anxiety in males and in females? Okay, So let's do that now. So the dataset that I have here is actually available in the library. So if you're curious, I think this is in the regression folder. This one, no, exam anxiety. So this is basically the data. The only change that I made is that I created another variable wherein I coded gender into numerical values. So male, I coded it as 1, and female, I coded it as 0, so that I can enter them in my regression analysis. Okay, so to run any regression-based analysis, let's first take a look at the bivariate correlations among our variables. So correlation, so our variables are anxiety, exam, and biological sex. Oh, not exam, sorry, reviewing. Okay, so as you can see, reviewing has a negative relationship with anxiety, kind of a strong relationship, no, negative 0.709. Gender, however, is not related to anxiety or reviewing, no, which is good, no, because traditionally moderators ideally shouldn't be related to your independent variable or dependent variable. Okay, so now that we have run our preliminary analysis, particularly Pearson R correlation, we can now proceed to our actual analysis, which is the moderation. Okay, so to do that, let's click on process. Okay, so in here, you'll be asked to identify which is your dependent variable. So our dependent variable, our outcome variable, is anxiety. So this is the one that is being predicted. And our predictors are reviewing. Wait, let me change this. And our categorical predictor is gender. You might be asking, why are we not being asked which is the moderator? In this case, the moderator is still considered as a predictor. And even if you're testing for mediation, you just have to identify which is the outcome variable, and the rest, either it's an IV or the moderator or the mediator, all of those goes into either this box or this box. But do note that for this particular box, you enter those that are considered as scale or continuous variables, and for here, your categorical predictors. Okay, all right, and then, so let's go here. Now, there are two ways by which you can run the moderation. So one is by constructing the model yourself. So if you want to do that, then you select variables. Okay. And then the other one is by choosing the model number. And this is what we are more familiar with, because when we were running process at SPSS, that's what we did. No? So we choose a model. And how do you know what models you will run? There is actually a PDF file, and this one is readily available in the internet. So just look for model templates for process for SPSS or SAS, and it basically gives you, I think, 40 something models. So for example, model 1 is your basic moderation model. Model 2 is moderation, but this time multiple moderators. Model 3 is kind of a moderated moderation. Model 4 is your basic mediation. Model 5 is moderated mediation with the moderating action in the direct effect. Okay, so forth and so on. So there are many models to choose from. Now, since what we're running is basic moderation, so we'll be using model 1. It says here, no, model number 1. And then it's asking which is the independent variable. It already knows what is the dependent variable. We've already specified that to be anxiety. So which is the independent variable? So let's put on review. And then our moderator is gender. It's also asking for a mediator, but we're not running a mediation, we're running a moderation. So nothing to put here. So it is computing. Other things that we should do, let's select standardized for the coefficients, no, for the estimates. So for this particular analysis, I think that would be sufficient. Note that there are options here for robust analysis and bootstrapping. So these are options that we have, in case, let's say, for example, there is some violation of assumptions, then we can select robust analysis. If there is kind of limited sample size, then maybe bootstrapping would be a good idea. So I suggest that you check literature regarding the appropriate use of robust analysis and bootstrapping, and for your particular project you can use those if they are appropriate. All right, so this is the result of our analysis. So this is how our model looks like. So reviewing predicts anxiety, but this relationship is dependent on gender. So in here, we can see a couple of things. One, this particular table shows us the coefficients for the relationship of reviewing and anxiety. So the impact of reviewing towards anxiety, we can see that it is significant and that it is negative. So that means to say that reviewing has a negative is a negative predictor of anxiety. The more you review, the lesser anxiety you experience. We can see that gender is not predictive of anxiety. But for our analysis, what is important really is this bit. Okay, so this part shows whether or not we have moderation. So this is the interaction term, the product of review and gender. And we can see that it is, or the p-value is less than 0.05, which is our usual alpha. We can also see from the confidence interval that 0 is not between the lower and upper confidence upper values of the 95% confidence interval, and those are indicators that we have successful moderation, that there is significant moderation. Now, before we get ahead of ourselves, I want to point out a particular concern. If you will report the relationship of review towards anxiety, because in our model, that seems to be one of our interests. Or let's say, for example, you're also interested in the impact of sex on anxiety. We really can't use these values, even this one. So we really cannot report that. And the reason why I'm saying that is because these values are not accurate, because of the fact that in this particular model, you have included the interaction term. So these values are under the assumption that the interaction is controlled for. And typically, if your goal is to report the impact of reviewing on anxiety, gender on anxiety, I won't suggest using or reporting these. To me, the only thing that is viable to report here is actually this one, no, the actual moderation. So what do we do? Now, what are our other options in order for me to show a model that does not include the interaction term, wherein I'm simply checking on the impact of reviewing on anxiety and gender on anxiety. So let me show you what I do. So let's run another process model so that you will see the difference. So the dependent variable still is anxiety. The predictor is still reviewing. The categorical predictor is still gender. But this time, instead of doing moderation using model number, let's run the analysis by specifying the variables. So we ourselves specify the variables. So you're kind of constructing the model. And with this, I can construct a model that only involves these two predictors. Okay, so let's do that. So you'll notice that in here there is from to, so that means to say from the IV to the DV, and then whatever process type. So is it a direct effect? If it's mediation or moderation, then you can put here what the moderator variable is, or what the mediator variable is, depending on what you select here. Okay, so anyway, so I'm gonna choose reviewing to anxiety, and that's gonna be a direct effect. It's computing, but not only that, I also want to check on, so I added, you'll notice that I clicked on the plus button, gender to anxiety, and I'm also interested in the direct effect. Similarly, let's choose standardized coefficients. And so this is the result of that particular analysis. So you will notice that this is the model that we have specified. I wanted to see whether reviewing and gender predicts anxiety. And I have these particular results. You'll also notice that there's a table here that says mediation effect. Please ignore that. We're not running mediation. So a while ago, I said that in our previous analysis, you really cannot trust the coefficients with regard to the impact of review to anxiety and gender to anxiety, because again, these results are results after controlling for the interaction. Okay. But what we want to see are the coefficients not controlling for the interaction. So instead of reporting this, we report the one that we ran more recently. You report this in your paper. If what you wanna talk about is the impact of reviewing on anxiety and gender on anxiety, and you'll notice that the coefficients are slightly different. So the impact of reviewing for towards anxiety here is negative 0.714, but in our previous analysis it's negative 8.71. Okay. Gender in here it's negative 117, although it's not significant. In here the coefficient is negative 118, so there is a slight difference. No? So again, I strongly suggest that in your paper you don't report these values. The only thing that you can use here that is meaningful here is the actual test for moderation. You should use these results instead if you want to talk about the impact of reviewing and gender on test anxiety. Okay, all right, so let's go back to our mediation. So now, moderation rather. So now that we know that there is moderation, that means to say that the impact of reviewing on anxiety differs. It differs between males and females. And what shows, or how do we see that particular difference? We go to the last table. There's a second table said that says mediation effect. Ignore that. Focus your attention on this one. Where in here, the results shows the impact of reviewing on anxiety. Okay, twice. The one above, the row above, is for 0. What is 0? 0 is a code for female. So the relationship between anxiety, reviewing and anxiety for females, these are the results. And for males, reviewing and anxiety, their relationship, these are the results. Okay. Now there is moderation, although we can see that in both cases, for both for males and females, it seems that reviewing both for males and females have significant negative relationship with test anxiety. But you will notice that in the estimates, the relationship is stronger among females compared to males. If we can base that on the estimates. So we have higher estimates here. So that means to say that yes, the more you review, the lesser you become anxious. But this seems to be more true, at least based on the size of the estimates. This seems to be more true among females relative to males. But that is not to say that it's not true for males, because as we can see, the relationship between reviewing and anxiety among males is still significant. All right. So that is how you run basic moderation analysis, particularly when your moderator is a dichotomous variable such as gender, and all of this is done in JASP using the latest process model. So in my next videos, I will use other examples involving a continuous moderator, and also an example wherein there is a covariate, a variable that is controlled for. All right, so I hope that you learned something, and I'll see you in the next. Bye, everyone.